morning and welcome to Ask Dr. Doreen. Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is here with us live in the studio answering your questions. Welcome. We love it.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
I always like to say to people, we get you whenever we possibly can, and we appreciate when we can't because there are other things that you have to do and other places that you have to be.
Thank you so much.
And I know everybody goes, oh, when we don't get to have you, but it's just that much more thrilling when we do get to have you. For people who don't know, you are a true expert in the field of autism.
Thank you very much.
And more than that, a visionary in the field of autism. You see things coming before they come, and you help all of us to be able to find the things that we need to find. And you donate this hour to answer people's questions all around the world. It's an amazing, amazing thing. It's a pleasure. We do like to remind everybody at the start of the show, though, that there is no expert in any field, but especially in this field, that can give individual specific advice in this particular format, right? So you send in your questions, be as specific as possible, and Dr. Granpeesheh is going to give you some information based on the wealth of knowledge that she has that will be general in nature, not specific to the person that you're asking about, but we have seen, and you guys have written in so many times and said how helpful this is because it helps you to make decisions about what step to take next or to know what question to ask when you go to the expert who actually has eyes on the case.
Right.
So we thank you for writing in your questions. I want to jump to some questions that have come in earlier today. The first one, hello Shannon and Dr. Doreen, hope you answer my question. Yesterday, I got a call from my son's school nurse telling me I had to go pick up my son and take him to the emergency room because he swallowed a nickel. They said he was working on money with his aide and he was angry because he didn't want to do the work, so he put the nickel in his mouth and swallowed it. I took him to the ER and he had an x-ray done. It showed the nickel was in his stomach. The doctor said I shouldn't worry because he would poop it out. I'm so upset and worried for my son. This is a school in New Jersey and it's a special needs school. And my son has his own aide who obviously is not fit to work with kids on the spectrum like my son. What should I do? I want to change him to a new school because I'm really scared now to send him there. Plus, they know nothing about ABA, even though they have a BCBA in the building. Please advise me and what I can do. Please, I'm desperate. I just want to keep him home with me. And she also wanted to know, would this affect his IEP if I keep him home until I find another school? Please help and thank you in advance. And it's a lot.
Tough situation, yeah.
And there's also, I just want to say, you know, I understand as a fellow autism mom that when we take our kids to school, it's a feeling of a loss of control, that they're there and we just hope and pray that they are safe. And when anything happens that challenges that, we go and on the alert, and it feels like the worst possible thing is happening in that moment. I get it. I totally get it.
Absolutely.
But I'd love to hear from you about
well, first of all, I mean, it's just hard to advise you because New Jersey is a difficult state, first of all. I don't know exactly how it would impact your IEP. First, I'll be straight out and tell you that. That's a legal question, and every state is a little bit different, and every district interprets that a little bit differently. I don't know if you can just pull him out and keep him. How old is he? Do we know?
I believe she said 7, or am I making that up?
Yeah,
I don't actually know. I don't think it says.
No, so that also has something to do with it as well. So unfortunately, I can't answer that portion of the question. But overall, what I want to say is that, you know, it is, I don't know the functioning level of your child, and I don't want to imagine what could have happened. I don't know if this was an aide who was just looking away and doing something else, or was actually engaged with your child, and this was simply an accident that was unavoidable from her perspective. I don't know any of that. But as Shannon said, sometimes we want, you know, we have expectations of the people around us, and it's really important to make sure that they are trained well. But what I'm saying, I suppose, is that keep in mind that even if someone is trained well, this type of thing could potentially happen. It can happen that the child is just angry, throwing a tantrum, takes the nickel, puts it in their mouth, and beyond that, then the aide, I'm not sure what else they could have done, you know? So we don't know one way or another for sure. You probably know a little bit better because you probably know this aide, you probably know what kind of training they've had. Now, the biggest portion of what you wrote that's disturbing is that there is actually a BCBA and that none of the aides have had any kind of ABA training. That is sort of a sad thing, and I can completely understand, and I encourage you to find a program that not only has ABA training, not just a program where, like, let's say the aides and teachers are trained in ABA, but try to get a one-to-one ABA person for your child, so that even if they're in school, they're actually using techniques of ABA to work with your child. And that's kind of what we've done for years and years in California, and in many other states as well, New York, where we actually have therapists who are fully trained and they're funded by the school, and they work with the children in school, in the classroom, outside of the classroom, etc. Now, you know, I don't want to, I always give this sort of lecture again. I know nothing about your child's functioning or age, but make sure that one of the things that you do is also to prioritize the importance of various lessons. Now, working on money might be important if your child is at a certain functioning level and able to go out and use that skill for some, like buying something or paying, etc. But don't necessarily just work on a particular skill if it's what's expected of the class. Like, I think with our kids, it becomes really important that we be very selective about the things that they're spending their time learning. So I always encourage parents to prioritize. Think of the fact that, you know, you have millions of things to teach the child and you have a limited amount of time, and use that time very wisely, and make sure that you have quality therapists, of course, but also you're teaching useful things. So, you know, I mean, I'm sorry it's not that helpful, but it's very hard. The other thing also is, by the way, if you leave your child here until you find another placement or call for an emergency IEP, that's what I would do. I would leave my child there and call for an emergency IEP. Know that because this event happened, everyone's going to be super cautious for a while, so they're going to be very, very careful and on their best behavior. So I would say it's even a safer environment right now.
It's funny, just as you were saying that, I was thinking, boy, that's so true, that this, you know, you could have gone to school the whole last 3 months and said, I want my aide trained in ABA, and they would be like, But now, and believe me, nobody would have ever wanted your child to swallow a nickel, and I was just imagining me in the emergency room flipping out because your child has swallowed, you know, and all the x-rays and everything. Nobody would want that. But you can now parlay this into a huge gift for you and for your child, because now, you know, it's documented that he swallowed a nickel under her care, and you can go in, and if you go in and very calmly say to them, and now you are going to get either this aide or somebody else ABA trained, because in the event that some other thing were to happen, they, you know, this is the prior warning. This would be a nightmare for them.
Absolutely.
So this, you have a whole bunch of power now because of this. Think very clearly about what you want. Get it, you know, even write it out, go in, say, I want to speak to whoever is in charge. Let's do the emergency IEP. Here's what you're going to do now as a result to ensure because if he can swallow a nickel, what else can happen? So we're going to nip this now. You probably can make your biggest wishes come true.
Absolutely.
And if it's that you want ABA training, I think they will give that to you now.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah, honestly.
And you may look back on this and go, this was a watershed moment. Nobody wanted it, but since this is what happened, now they're going to have to do what's right.
Definitely.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Will you do me a favor and write us back and let us know how that goes? And because your child being safe, number one. I get it.
Definitely.
I get it. Okay. Another person wrote in and said, any suggestions for weaning a 4-year-old off of a bottle? He throws huge tantrums and hits the refrigerator when I don't give it to him, and thanks.
Right. So, you know, I guess I have 2 answers for you, and hopefully they're both useful. So the first thing is, yes, there are some things you can do, and I'm going to tell you exactly how to do them in a minute. But before I do that, I want to make sure that you realize that his huge tantrum and hitting the refrigerator is allowing him. It's a behavior. It's something he does because he's saying, if he could talk and get his way by talking, he would say, I really want my bottle. Now, there isn't a single child who has a bottle who willingly gives it up. Everybody wants their bottle. Once they're on a bottle, it's a weaning procedure, and we'll talk about the weaning procedure in a minute. But as long as your child throws a tantrum or hits the refrigerator and you give him the bottle, you are teaching him that throwing a tantrum and hitting a refrigerator is an effective way to communicate. So, like everything else, if I was to say, can I have that bottle, and you gave me the bottle, I would learn that the words, can I have that bottle, were effective. It was a useful way of communicating. Now, if I can't do that, and I hit you, or I hit myself, or I throw a massive tantrum, or I pound on the refrigerator, and someone sees that and panics and hands me the bottle, I have now learned that doing all those behaviors are an effective way to getting the bottle. So the very first thing you must do is stop reacting when he has a tantrum or hits the refrigerator. It's okay. He will not hit himself to the point where he's going to injure himself. In fact, if you're not there, most likely he won't hit himself. If you don't look at it, most likely he won't throw a massive tantrum. The tantrum and the hitting the refrigerator are just an objective, are just his way of saying, I'm really frustrated. But so what? So let him do that, and then he will calm down. And if you don't react to that, you can also stand in front of the refrigerator so he doesn't hit it. You can let him do the tantrum and get it over with. And what you do is, instead, you give him the bottle if he asks for it. And so this could be a nonverbal child, and it could be possible for him not to be able to ask. So you make it very easy for him to ask. For instance, you have a picture of a bottle, and he gets his bottle when he touches the picture, for example. So with every behavior, when it's a challenging behavior that's being used for communication purposes, you make sure that the child doesn't get their way when they do that behavior, but they do get what they want when they request it appropriately. And that's a really important thing in ABA. That's how we change behavior. We teach individuals that this particular behavior is not effective in getting what you want. Now, he's on a bottle. Let's assume you've given him the bottle. Your question is more, how do I wean him off? And this is appropriate for any child. So you just take the bottle, and instead of, how the thing at the top, the nook or the little pacifier section has one hole in it, you will poke another hole in it and give it to him. And then like a day later, you'll poke a third hole in it and you'll give it to him. And very, very gradually over the course of, let's say, 2 weeks, you will now start cutting little pieces off of the pacifier section so that it produces a hole. The whole thing about a bottle, there's two reasons that a child might want a bottle. One is what's in it, and one is the sensation of sucking, which is sort of calming and peaceful. This is a 4-year-old. So basically, as you increase the hole size, usually what happens with our kids is that they no longer enjoy the sucking. And so it becomes, and you just keep increasing it, and it becomes very much like drinking. And then once it starts to become like drinking, you switch over to a sippy cup. And again, once you remove the bottle, if he tantrums, it doesn't matter. You just offer him the sippy cup. That's that, and you move away. The other side of it is that what's in the bottle could be something that he's like extremely into and he wants it. What you do is you start reducing so you will mix it. Let's say it's formula or milk or juice or whatever it is. You start watering that down and you start reducing the amount. Whereas in the sippy cup, you give him the pure form. So in the sippy cup, you give him real juice or real milk. But in the bottle, you're giving him watered down milk or watered down juice. So you essentially, over time, you make it so that the bottle can't compete with the sippy cup.
Right.
The sippy cup is so much better. And the bottle is now also resembling the sippy cup in terms of its suction factor.
That's brilliant. And I have to say for parents, because we always have to be reminded that going slow, like the doing
It's a slow
one
process, yeah.
one hole at a time, that think about daylight savings time, that every single day, the where the sun changes, at which time it goes down, it changes by like between a half a minute and a minute and a half every single day.
Yeah.
And we don't notice it. We don't notice it at all.
So true.
Until daylight savings comes, and then we move it by an hour, and everybody's freaked out for an entire week.
Yeah.
Like you can't find your keys, you don't, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's daylight savings. I'm awake, I'm asleep, and it's just 57 more minutes. That's the difference between going slow and going quick.
Yeah.
So the poke in the hole is just like the sun changes every day by a minute, and we don't notice.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
brilliant though.
Yeah,
I
no,
love that.
thanks.
It's almost evil. It's so brilliant,
It's
right?
just anything. So that allows you to kind of avoid the confrontation. Like
Yeah.
You just go slowly and the child will give it up himself.
Child doesn't notice.
Same thing when
Amazing.
people often ask me, like one of the other things is like kids who are really attached to a blanket.
Yeah.
So what we would do is just start cutting it up. Like
Yeah.
start making it smaller, smaller. I
Just
remember
littler and littler.
I remember with one of our kids years and years ago, literally his huge blanket had turned into this, and
Right.
then he would put it in his pocket and he was fine.
Right.
It was such a
But it
cute
works,
transition.
and
Oh,
that's the point. But you have to do it at such a slow rate that they don't notice. If you do it big enough that they do notice,
Then
then
it starts
you've
to
gone
really,
too
yeah.
far. Yeah, then you get into the whole thing. I absolutely love it. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back. We've got questions that are coming in that I want to deal with. The next one that I want to deal with is about a pediatrician appointment that's coming up soon, and whether or not they should push for diagnosis or advice about when they say, let's wait 3 to 6 months to reevaluate.
Right.
So stick with us. And for the person who just turned 3 today, we're going to get to your question right after that. So stick with us right back after these messages.
Hi guys, welcome back. For the month of May, I thought it'd be really neat if we made our own bird feeders. What's cool about it is once it's done and it's hung in your front yard, backyard, balcony, or whatever outdoor area that you have, your kids will be able to observe the bird feeder and tap when they see birds coming over and feeding from it. Like, oh my gosh, oh, so exciting. Do you see that? Sorry, I got distracted. I'm just so excited about all the different birds I've been seeing now that I have a bird feeder hanging outside. Anywho, let's get started. The materials you'll be needing are 2.5 cups of birdseed, half a cup of boiling water, 2 packets of unflavored gelatin, a spatula, twine, scissors, wax paper, and cookie cutters. Alright, now that I got your materials, it's super easy. I have my boiling hot half cup of water, and I'm going to take my 2 packets of unflavored gelatin, and I'm going to pour them in and stir it. The reason I pour it in the water first all by itself is to make sure that the gelatin dilutes really well, and I can stir it up real nicely. Now that it's been all stirred together, I'm going to take this liquid and pour it into the birdseed, making sure to scrape up all the gelatin that we diluted. Now I'm just going to stir it all up. Okay, now that this is all mixed up, I'm going to take my wax paper and put it on my table just so I don't make a mess. And then I'm going to take my cookie cutter and lay it down. I'm also going to take a piece of string and cut it, about 6 inches long. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill the cookie cutter halfway full with our birdseed mixture. And I'm going to take my string, fold it in half, I'm going to place it in the center. This way you can hang this up once it's done and dry. Okay, now that it's full, I'm just going to pack it in. So now that this is all compacted, it's going to take about 6 hours for the gelatin to get completely hard. If you take it out too soon, the whole thing's going to fall apart. So let's wait a little bit, and I'll see you guys in a few moments. All right, it's been 6 hours now, so let's see if this little guy worked out. So I'm just going to pull him up and pop him out, okay? And here's my finished bird feeder. All you have to do now is hang it outside and wait for all the great things you're gonna see. Like, oh, I see another bird. This is so exciting. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the activity and keep me up to date with all the different birds that you and your child see outside your property. Until next time, craft on. Bye, guys.
Can you see me? Can you see me flying by your side?
Inclusion is everything. Feeling like we have a place where we belong, and when I say we, I'm first and foremost a mother of a child on the spectrum and gym owner and now founder of carrying this to families who need it as well.
My son is extremely hyperactive. Getting him to calm down is a very difficult task. So the idea of Rock the Spectrum Gym, where he could just go and run and play and do all these fun things without any kind of worries and just go, go, go and bring down that energy, it helps us so much at home. You know, in the home or at school, it's not acceptable, but this is the one place it is acceptable for the child to kind of be themselves and get it all out there and just really just be themselves.
It's an amazing place where my son could go and be himself. You get to meet other parents who are in the same journey as you are.
I think the most popular aspect of it is how they include all children of all types, not just only learning disabled, lower functioning, moderate functioning, high functioning, and non-disabled.
The people there are so friendly, everybody's like family, they always greet you with a smile. There's not one negative thing I could say about any of the employees, they're all absolutely amazing. I think every parent should walk in through those doors and see what an amazing gym it is.
Now a diagnosis being 1 out of 6 kids are in some way or form affected with sensory processing disorder or autism. That's why We Rock Now is on the rise. People want to be a part of it. People know that they have a community there. They know that they can learn more information about things that they don't know themselves or that they can share, build friendships, and basically get what you get in an OT facility, but it's not $150 an hour. It's $12.
Welcome back. We're here with Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh, and she is answering your questions in real time. I promised that we would go to a question that we had. I'm trying to think which question I promised first.
Oh, we're just going to deal with the 2 live ones. One is the doctor one.
The doctor one.
Okay.
That was the one that I wanted to go to next, but hang on, it's coming up.
Sure.
I've got 2 iPads and I lost my mind completely.
Yeah.
My daughter is almost 3 and we have our developmental pediatrician appointment coming up soon. How can we avoid them just prescribing early intervention first, then reevaluating after 3 or 6 months? She needs help now and we don't want to wait for a diagnosis.
So let's be really clear on the possible things that might be happening here. And it's really important because in different states, early intervention means different things, and to different people, it has started to take on different meaning. So early intervention, when you say that to us, it means early intensive behavioral intervention, EIBI, which is ABA at its purest form, best form, and it's for young children who have already been diagnosed. If it's early intervention and it's said by a state or a physician, most likely it's not pure ABA, and it's just sort of like intensive. It's not really even intensive. It's a few hours of trying to teach the child various things. And the reason they do that prior to diagnosis is that they're trying to actually reduce the symptoms to the point where you might not even get a diagnosis after 6 months. So what I would suggest that you do is you go to the pediatrician for the checkup and you go prepared. So you can download from online, just Google symptoms of autism, and you'll get a diagnostic checklist that's called the DSM-5 diagnosis symptoms is what I would put in, diagnostic symptoms of autism, DSM-5, and you'll get it's a checklist, and you basically will look at those realistically, and if you feel your child exhibits those symptoms, it's really simple, then you have good cause to go to the pediatrician, take that with you and say, look, my child is doing this, this, and this, and I'm pretty sure he's doing this, so this is why I'm worried that it might be autism, and I need you to please give me a diagnosis one way or another now, because I need the diagnosis in order to get ABA from my health insurance. That's the path that you should be going. You should get, if you want to get coverage or pay from your medical insurance, your health insurance, you will not get it without a diagnosis of autism. So you need to get that diagnosis in place. In fact, I mean, other types of disorders will get some form of treatment as well, but the diagnosis is what they need before any kind of intervention actually occurs. And I highly recommend, no matter what the age of your child, that you do go after health insurance. It's a lot less restricted, like you will have unlimited coverage, which is way better than usually what you get from state type programs. Is just 5 hours, 10 hours a week, or like, you know, we'll have a BCBA consult with you. That kind of stuff is not going to work. You need actual behavior technicians coming and sitting and working with your child one-on-one and doing intensive work. If you get the diagnosis, the sooner the better, because you are, you know, the ages 2 and 3, the brain is very malleable and can learn a lot, and there's a lot to teach. So that's what I would do. If you get the runaround, go to another pediatrician, go to a psychologist who specializes in autism. There are now more and more practices that are actually developing that are specializing in the diagnosis of autism.
Okay, I want to quickly pivot to Gerald has written into us on Facebook, and he said, my kid just turned 3 today, and we want to say happy birthday. They are nonverbal, and they cannot yet walk on their own.
Okay.
He says, the biggest issue I have is that she hits herself in the face with slaps and punches. I think she usually does this as a matter of pain control, as she has constipation issues often. I understand that she is in pain and her need to express it, but what can I do to stop her from hitting herself? I tell her no. She doesn't really understand the meaning. If I try to restrain her physically, she gets more upset. I usually try to find random things I think might distract her, but it's just so heartbreaking to see your child hit themselves.
Yes, it is.
We're sending you a hug.
So what I guess there's a few things. Immediately, I would try to just replace the punching of her face with punching something else. Like get her a punching bag. Like literally get her a punching bag and start, whenever she starts hitting her face, model for her how to punch something else. I'm not sure it will work, because if it is, you do your best to replace it. It's hard to find another activity that gives her the same sensory input as hitting herself. Now, if she is hitting herself, let's first make sure that the function of the hitting is pain, because that's a very hard thing to identify, right? Because she's only 3 and she can't tell you. So assuming that the hitting is pain, it is, and she's hitting herself because somehow that averts the pain, we need to really focus on the pain and why the pain is there. So have you seen a gastroenterologist? Are you dealing with the constipation? That is probably your #1 goal, because you know a lot of gastroenterologists will give you medications like Miralax or whatever so that she doesn't experience severe constipation. You also need to really be looking at her diet and determining what kind of diet will help her not have bloating and constipation. That is very, very important. Now, if she's a very picky eater, a behavior analyst, a BCBA, or a therapist can actually help with that. We do teach our kids to have a very broad diet, but it's important to identify what kind of diet will not cause her to have constipation. It's important to give her medication so that she overcomes the constipation. That's actually extremely important. The next question I have is, why can't she walk? What is leading to that? Because she's 3 years old, and if she has really severe gross motor issues, that's where you would be focused as well, secondarily. And you would be trying to get some physical therapy, occupational therapy, ABA people working on teaching her to walk. So that's another thing to look at, unless there's another physical ailment that I'm not aware of. The third area is she's nonverbal. So it is really important for us to teach her to vocalize or communicate in some way, so that going forward she can express some of her pain and other things to you so that you can help. So I would start with a visual program of communication, which is usually a PECS program, Picture Exchange Communication System, or any kind of electronic, like Proloquo is a good program on the iPad. But essentially it's just teaching the child to identify labels, actions, and then gradually it becomes much, much more advanced, and then we start to teach things like identifying feelings, but and you know, sensations like pain. But I would say, in order, I think, you know, immediately the only thing you can do right now is blocking of the hitting of the self. A lot of parents will use I don't know if you've seen those little hats that wrestlers put on. Like, it's sort of it's a half face mask even, and it's padded material. And it's not a bad idea to put that, because not only are you avoiding actually injury, she won't be able to injure herself, but over time she won't gain access to the sensation of hitting her face. So then it's likely she might replace it with a punching bag or some other thing that she can punch. So that's the one way of stopping it. I would work on stopping it first. I would work on figuring out the gastrointestinal issues and the pain related to that, the constipation second. I would figure out why she's not walking and focus on that, and I would really focus on teaching communication.
Yeah, functional communication. Okay, great. And do us a favor and write us back in if you need more clarification or if there's more information that would help us. I want to move to a question that came in just now in the live feature. My 9-year-old son was taken off of the GFCF diet just to see how he would do. And she wrote in all caps, "big mistake." His problem behaviors increased dramatically. He was having about 6 out of 7 days without problem behavior. He was having about 6 out of 7 days with problem behaviors that were really unsafe. Now we put him back on, and he has had 0 bad days until yesterday. Something happened at school where the teacher messaged me and said my son was overstimulated. He was covering his ears, running around, shaking bins, and then he took off all of his clothes and ran out in the hall. My question to them was, how was he able to undress and get out of the class fast enough? I don't expect him to have a good day every day, but how can I avoid this from happening again? When he gets older, he could possibly be expelled for running around the school naked. This is the first time he has ever done that, and I don't know what happened. And she gave us a sad face.
Understood. Now, so it's good that you have the GFCF under control, and that's great, and that see that as a contributing factor to our kids' irritability. That's how I see it. It's like our children get to a point where there's so much annoying them, and they have not learned how to communicate their annoyance well enough, or to tolerate it well enough, so they act out. Now, possibly when he was off the GFCF diet, he was experiencing various annoyances, and so as a result, maybe he had pain, maybe it was making him feel very cloudy or out of it, whatever it was, it was leading to increased behaviors. Okay, great. But there will be other things that will lead to behavior as well, challenging behavior as well. It won't be just dietary factors. So very clearly what happened to him in this scenario was that some sort of sound was irritating him, perhaps if he's covering his ears. Something is happening where he's starting to lose his tolerance and his patience, right? And so then really the question becomes, does he have an aide? Does he have someone who's watching him? Because it does take a few minutes to completely undress, and why isn't anybody blocking him from after he takes off the first item of clothing? Why isn't anybody stopping him? So to some extent, before they get to blame you and expel him, you get to blame them, because it's their job to keep him safe and not allow him to get undressed and run into the hallway. So the real question is, hey, or what I would do is I would go to the school, I would call an emergency IEP, I would say, guys, it is clear from what happened the other day that you guys are not managing him well. It is really clear that he needs his own one-to-one. I'm assuming that he has like a classroom aide or something, but not his own one-to-one. If he does have a one-to-one, then you say, it is clear the one-to-one needs more training. So before you start to be defensive, be a little offensive here and go to the school and say, I'm giving you my child during the day. It is your responsibility to take care of his needs. What happened here? Why did you not watch over him? Why did you not prevent him from getting undressed? Why are you not teaching him? Clearly, he needs also to have practice and learn these skills and so on. So you guys need to get on the ball and give me more resources here. So, sometimes our kids will do whatever it takes to just clearly he has some sensory dysregulation issues, right? So he has auditory issues where sound might be bothering him. It's possible that he has sensory stuff, so he wanted to take off his clothes because it was bothering him. I don't know. You need a BCBA to come in, a behavior analyst to come in, and to start figuring out what the function was here. Why did he actually remove his clothes? It doesn't sound like a direct connection to auditory, right? If you're hearing sounds that are bothering you and he's doing this, I wouldn't make the immediate jump to now the next thing he will do is take his clothes off. So something provoked that or evoked that, and I don't know what that was. We'd have to identify what happened right before it, how did they consecrate it, what were the things that happened here, so we could identify if he was trying to get out of a situation, if he was trying to get out of discomfort, if he was trying to gain access to something outside, if he was just trying to get attention. I don't know. There's lots of possibilities, and unless you figure that out, you won't be able to know exactly how to deal with it.
Absolutely. And I totally agree with you about going back in and saying you have not handled this.
Yeah,
a lot of times at school, it's like who points the finger first. Your child has a right to free appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment.
That's right.
Your child has already shown that he can make it work in the classroom, but something happened and he needed some more support. So it's incumbent upon you to go back in and ask for that more support. And if they start talking about moving his classroom, you say, no, he already proved he can do it. You just need more support there. Don't let them get you on the wrong side of that argument there. Okay, I want to move on to a question that has come in. Good morning, Shannon and Dr. Doreen. I'm from India and now in the US and have a 14-year-old son on the spectrum, and my husband would like to know if you think that hypnosis would be beneficial to him. He is verbal and may be in the middle of the spectrum. And she said, thank you. And she said, thanks, Shannon, for this wonderful show, and thanks a lot to Dr. Doreen for her valuable time. We so appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
What do you think, hypnosis?
So I don't know. The people I just don't know enough about his functioning level. And also people have different levels of susceptibility to hypnosis. There's a very good test. I think it's called the Stanford test of hypnotizability or something like that. You can look it up. And it is a test, and it's a questionnaire. And you answer the questionnaire, and it establishes a value for how hypnotizable you are. There are some people who are instantly hypnotizable, and there are others who are not really hypnotizable. And so, it's worth answering the questionnaire and seeing if it would in any way benefit him.
I'm sure that I am the most hypnotizable person. All you have to do is say, like spiders, and I'm crawly, right? I'm the most suggestible person there is. All right, so interesting. We'll check that out. Somebody else says, hello, Dr. Doreen and Mrs. Shannon. Did you get to watch the Indian movie Barfi at the Autfest? This is from India. Your show is my lifeline. Thank you so much.
Oh.
And you know what? There were long days at the Autfest where we were starting at 9:30 in the morning, and we were done with interviews at about, Barfi started, and so I already missed the beginning of it because we had to dismantle our stuff, and I know that I can get it online, so I left so that we could come back and do the second day. So I did not I heard it was magical. I heard that it was just absolutely beautiful. But we're planning on watching it as a family because you can get it online.
Oh, nice.
So I didn't get, but there were so many amazing films at Autfest. We are going to talk about that in the next hour. And then I do want to say that the mom that you were just talking about, the son with the GFCF diet, she said, thank you, Dr. Doreen. I will do that because a few months ago, they allowed him to run back into the building during a fire drill.
Yeah.
And she said, so I will do that. And thank you very much. I'm so glad that you guys had an opportunity to talk because that's
Absolutely.
just not going to
Not
work
okay.
if they're letting him do that. Okay, we had two questions that came in about speech volume. One
Okay.
about a young woman on the spectrum who's getting ready to come back and have CARD program. She's an adult on the spectrum. The other one, they said, hello, my son is 16 years old and speaks constantly and pretty loudly from the time he wakes up to the time that he goes to bed. He's extremely smart and makes good grades in school. However, it's distracting to the other children in class. I'm afraid that it will hamper his efforts in college and afterwards, and I'm not sure what type of therapy he needs or what to do. He has a behavior therapist that comes to the house several days out of the week, but they do not seem to know what to do. For the young woman who's an adult, she has recently been doing a lot of press stuff because she has a business. And so she makes beautiful jewelry, and so she's been doing a lot of press, but it's a bit of an issue because she talks loudly, and so they're coming back to CARD to
Right.
work on that and some other things. So,
Okay, so let's go one at a time.
okay. I was lumping them together
Yeah,
because they're
sure,
both
sure.
talking loudly, but I'm sure it's different.
Right. Well, this one is. So is this one also talking loudly, and we want
Yes.
to reduce the volume?
Yes, in both
I
cases,
see.
they're talking too loudly.
Oh, okay, interesting. Because I thought one has to do with, and I was like preparing to explain
if
how
they-
to increase volume.
Yeah, but she clarified with me that she's talking too loudly, not that she's
Right.
not talking loud enough,
Right.
talking too loudly.
Right. So so a couple of things. One is there are lots of different things you could do depending on the functioning level of the individual, because we tend to modify our volume based on usually based on the person's expression. We all have different, different hearing abilities. Sometimes I notice with my kids when we're watching TV, I'm like, guys, turn it up. Like, I can't hear it. And they're like, fine. And also, of course, as you age, you lose the ability to hear certain sounds completely.
Oh,
There
is
are-
that what's happening?
No, I mean, it is amazing that actually,
Wow.
and when I say when you age, but it's not even when you age, there are lots of sounds that you can only hear up to age 10. Which is really fascinating.
Well,
Did you not
doesn't
know
that
this?
explain? No, I did not know this at all.
It's fascinating. So you can actually get apps that play with that, because they'll play a sound. It's like a little beep, and the young children will all be like, yeah, there it is, and none of us hear anything at all. It's a very fascinating
Wow.
experiment.
That's
yeah.
interesting for our kids too,
Oh,
because
yeah.
we
Oh,
see
yeah.
that. I mean, you look at Carly Fleischman, who wasn't able to communicate because it was all garbled sound. But then
Absolutely.
after she was 13, she could sort the sounds out. So maybe those sounds had filtered out.
100%. 100%.
Wig
So-
blown.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can't do that to me. It's gonna make me laugh all day.
Sorry. No, seriously, that's amazing.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of an interesting thing. But because of that, when we speak, that's just one reason. But and also aging. But when we speak to people or when we interact, if someone's like, "What?" Like, you'll speak up, or if they're like, you'll get the idea that you need to kind of modify your speech. And a lot of sound modification we learn, or volume modification we learn it has nothing really to do with the ears, but it has to do with environmental factors. Like, for
That
example,
social component.
it's a social component, exactly. So if you're in a library, everyone automatically starts to whisper, right? That's just an automatic social thing we've learned. If you're in a studio, you will keep it at a certain level. If you're in a room that echoes, you will lower your volume. There's certain things that we do. Just if someone is at a distance, you'll increase your volume. Like, there's a lot of things that we've learned about volume that is possible. Again, that's why I'm saying I don't know the level of functioning of these two individuals. You have to make sure that they're aware of all of those social things, right? So, for instance, do they realize that, can they read body expression? Can they tell that they are being too loud? Are they being told that this is too loud, modify it? If the person is able to reduce their volume, even momentarily, so if they're at the point where I say, that's too loud, could you say it softer, please? If they can do that, then it's just a matter of increasing the duration of speaking at a lower volume, right? And that is easy to do because that's just shaping. So that's like, you start at a low volume, and as they start to increase, the person you practice with them, right? And you just keep going like this, and you keep going. You give them a hand gesture, and they'll start to gradually realize that the duration of time has to increase where they're maintaining a lower volume. So that, and then you remove the hand. So it's just a shaping procedure. If they actually can't understand what it means to speak at a lower volume, then what you have to do is increase their own auditory input. So what I would do is probably figure out a way where you have a very loud headphones on, so Bose or noise cancellation, some sort of headphone where they will hear their own sound going back in at a very high volume, and as they reduce it, you reduce the volume. So this entry for them has to be uncomfortable with their normal volume. And so gradually what you do is they're going to want lower volume, and they can control it by actually speaking lower. All you have to do is attach a microphone to Bose headphones. That's it. And usually if you actually do like those karaoke microphones or something, they're pretty loud. Like, they can be very, very loud setting. And then you teach them to whisper. Another thing you can do is to actually get very close to the individual, because as you get close to people, they realize that they can reduce their volume. And so whispering is the exact opposite, obviously, of loud volume. So teaching an individual to whisper will also help reduce the volume. So those are just some things. But keep in mind, for the person who's doing a lot of like TV shows and so on, it sounds like they probably are very high functioning or at the level where they can initially learn. It's just all the social cues they probably are not really realizing that it's disturbing to other people.
Okay. And I will say, you know, the Bose headphones and all that, not everybody can afford that. And I will tell you that
there's a lot of noise canceling.
The really inexpensive thing that they gave us at one point, they took PVC pipe and they just made like a U shape, so it looked like a phone out of PVC pipe, and would have him talk like he was on the phone.
That's fantastic.
And what it does is it sends the sound, and they can hear their volume.
That is the best.
So
that's the best.
And super, you know, maybe $3 worth of PVC pipe.
Fabulous idea.
Remember,
we used to do that kind of stuff with. Isn't there a game we used to play as kids with just like pipes, like the telephone game or something?
Yes, absolutely.
Any kind of pipe, I guess, that you could do this would be fantastic idea.
And the thing with the PVC pipe is that it actually, you know, because it's, I don't know, but it magnifies it a little bit.
It accentuates it for sure.
And I do want to say that, you know, you were saying we want them to be uncomfortable. I just want to clarify so we don't get letters.
Yes,
I'm not talking about making them be in pain or lose hearing, but just enough for them to experience what other people are experiencing.
Absolutely.
Not causing any harm to them. Just
definitely.
To throw that in.
So just sort of they get the idea that their volume is disturbing to other people, which is why we want to reduce it.
Absolutely. Okay.
And also, by the way, check their hearing.
Yes.
Like, if they're not getting the message, that you might want to check and make sure their hearing is intact.
There you go. Okay, we've just got a couple of minutes here, so I want to deal with my 8-year-old high-functioning son loves to spin. He says he loves watching everything in the room move really fast and says he doesn't really get dizzy. How can he get the same input during the day? His 504 allows for movement breaks, but there is only a trampoline, mat, and weighted blanket. Thank you.
Yeah, you would have to buy him a swing. The spinning is done with swings oftentimes, and if he has an aid, which I assume there will be someone there, they will just turn the swing and then he spins back. But I wouldn't do too much of this either. I mean, I would reserve this as a reinforcer, or as something that can help calm him perhaps when he needs it, or stimulate him when he needs it.
Do you remember when they used to do, they called it the astronaut training program, and that they would do with the very small kids? OTs were really into it. And basically you got 2 pieces of board and you put a Lazy Susan between them, and you could spin them on that. And it was a very specific protocol where first
you just made me realize something else. Go ahead.
Okay, so first they would sit up, and look it up online. First they would sit up and you'd spin them like 20 times one direction, then 20 times the other direction. And then they'd lay down on their left side and you'd spin them 20 times and spin them the other way. And then there were like 6 different positions. And again, we couldn't at first afford the Lazy Susan, so we did it in an office chair.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's a great idea.
I'm like the cheap way of doing everything.
There
So
you
we did it in the office chair, and because when he was little, what it did was it stimulated a part of his brain and he spoke better afterwards.
Interesting.
But then we weaned off of it. It's not like he still spins and does
I love that. That's amazing. There's also these very cool, now that you're talking about, they're for exercising your waist. They're like a circular thing,
and you do
stand on it, right?
the
And
Lori
if you
Grenier
actually
from the Shark
stand
Tank.
on there, you can go around really, really fast.
Oh, can you?
Yeah.
I love those. I need one of those for my office. You do the thing. Okay. Nobody needed to see me do that. But it's good for you.
Yeah, these are awesome for that. What a good idea.
Well.
But and also I think you can look up the astronaut training program or for autism. I think it's online.
Your OT should have the equipment to do that with him at school for breaks. That should be a thing that and you can request that they get that equipment. But everybody has an office chair, I'm just saying, at school, not everybody. Okay, last question that I think we're going to have time for. My son is 4-year-old who is autistic. He is frightened of some signs and writings, even TV ads. Since 2 days ago, he is scared of the TV downstairs and won't go down at all. Is there any way to overcome his fears? Thanks.
Yeah. So there's overcoming fear is done through a procedure called systematic desensitization, and I'm not sure I think we've done shows on this before, so hopefully we have something up on that you can look. But first thing I would do is I would find out if it's the visual or the auditory that's scaring him. So most of the time our kids are not scared by visual input, which is why I think the TV is a little weird. But it could be, since you've also seen him be afraid of signs and writings. But figure out if it's visual or it's auditory, which basically means, like, is he still scared of the TV if there's no volume? Okay, for example. And then it's a matter of, once you've identified the stimulus, you will break it down to the least, let's say I'm afraid of TVs. Watching a TV would be the number 10, the most scary thing. Like looking at a small screen like this would be probably the least scary, or maybe a picture of a TV would be the least scary, whatever it is. And you make like 20 things in between, and you acclimate the individual to the least scary thing. So let's say a picture of the TV, and you teach them how to relax and like handle it and all that, no problem. The next thing would be, let's say, walking past the TV or walking past the screen, and you gradually acclimate the person to the actual TV, and then you increase the duration of time. Then what I just kind of in 1 minute, 30 seconds described systematic desensitization. It's a much larger procedure, so you should read up on it or look at one of our programs where we've talked about it.
Wonderful.
But it's entirely possible to get over any kind of fear, so don't worry about that. I know our time is out, but there's this one question here that I saw that says, what is the reason why my little sister has autism? And I couldn't let that one go.
Okay.
So, I don't, if this person, if you're watching this show, we sometimes don't be afraid and don't worry that your little sister has autism. Autism is just a different way of experiencing the world, and it's like her brain probably works a little bit differently than yours does. So she probably has a little bit harder time understanding language, and so because of that, it'll be hard for her to learn things the way that we normally teach them. But a lot of people with autism have other skills that are different and much cooler, and they actually kind of figure out how to, with help, with good therapy, ABA is the type of therapy, they will learn how to live pretty well in our environment, in our world, but then they can also kind of do really cool things with their other skills that we often don't have. So sometimes they have amazing artistic abilities. So maybe your little sister will actually be really good at like painting or drawing or music, or maybe she'll have a really good memory or other things. So it's just a different thing. So don't let it scare you. You can still play with her and, you know, do all the different things, and she'll just need a little bit more time to figure out how to understand language.
One of the films we particularly loved this weekend that was a short, and it won for Best Short at Autfest, was a film called Sisterly. And it was made by an older sister about her younger sister and some of the fears that she had about communicating with her sister, and how three sisters sort of have gotten to a place of understanding and working that out. I think that parents, you know, screen it. It's a short, you know, maybe 8-minute long film, and see if it's something that's appropriate for the children in your life to see.
Yes.
Because it's from the point of view of a sibling, and it was very moving. And I got to meet the sister, the filmmaker. We're going to try to have her on the show to talk
Very
about it. It was a
nice.
really lovely, lovely film. And as I said, won awards. So we are out of time, but I just want to say that the Mom About Hypnosis wrote back and said she was just wondering if there's any data, if your clients have done it.
Yeah.
She says that, she said, I understand each child is different, but your opinion counts a lot, all in caps.
Thank you very much.
So
I don't know, I don't think I know anyone who has used hypnosis for within the spectrum and whether it has helped. Generally, hypnosis can be very helpful. You have to be pretty imaginative, and again, you have to have a high suggestibility factor.